Now, I've had quite a few interviews up until this point, and like a lot of people, I tend to find them to be a pretty stressful part of the process. I mean, it took you like, what, at least 100 applications just to get to this point, and if you don't make a good first impression this time around, well, there you go with another 100 applications just to get another opportunity. So there's a lot riding on this opportunity, and let's be honest, that whole stressful situation can end up making it really hard to make a good first impression. I mean, when your stress is going through the roof, thanks to waiting for a phone call or in the waiting room for a video call, then it ends up making you trip over your words or say the wrong thing, and it can end up honestly decreasing your chances as a whole. Thankfully, after all these interviews I've had, I've actually found that there are a few different things that interviewers have actually done on their end to make the process less stressful for me. And in turn, that actually helps me be a better version of myself and helps me reduce my stress and in turn put on a much better first impression. So today I'm going to share 3 things that every interviewer has done for me to make this process less stressful and help me put on a much better version of myself. Now, up until this point, I would say I had a pretty good combination of both phone screens and video interviews. Now, what's interesting is that I've actually found that in most cases, phone screens actually make me more nervous than video interviews. Now, during a phone screen, you can only really hear the other person on the other end. So the thing is, whenever you have a phone screen, you end up losing a lot of that human connection between the two people. All you can really do is hear their voices, their answers, and the inflections in their voices, and you lose a lot of that context through your body language and your facial expressions and everything like that. That really adds a lot to what you're saying. In a video call, on the other hand, or in an in-person interview, it really makes it a lot easier to add that extra little bit of context and all those little details in the way that you act and express yourself that can really make a much bigger impression on your interviewer. You can actually make eye contact with each other, you can see each other, and in turn, it just makes it so much easier to build that human connection with each other. All that combined, it adds so much more context to the conversation. You can see how you interact with each other, you can see how people react to the things that you say, and they can see how you react to the things they say. It just makes that connection so much easier than it would be over a phone call where all you can do is just hear each other. Now, it doesn't matter if you're doing a phone interview or a video interview or anything like that. There's one particular thing that I found between both of them that is the same no matter how many times you do interviews, and that is the beginning. Let's be honest, the beginning is always the most stressful part because you're anticipating that moment when you're about to talk to each other. You're meeting the interviewer for the first time. You're not really sure what to expect from the interview. So there's a lot of stress that builds up in those first few moments. And I found that the second thing that interviewers do really helps with this. So a few weeks ago, I had a video interview. Up until those final moments before the interview started, I was starting to get really nervous because I was anticipating that moment. I'd never been with this company before, never heard of them before, never talked to this person before. And so it ended up making me very nervous. It was like, oh my gosh, it's almost time. It's almost time. How am I going to react? What am I going to say? So I was expecting to start the interview with her saying a little bit about the role and then allowing me to talk about myself. What she instead did was took about 5 whole minutes at least to talk about herself, the job itself, the company, what she expected from the role. But I think it wasn't just to help me get an idea of what she wanted for the role, but also to help me sort of calm my nerves down, to help me better prepare for the rest of the interview. By her taking more time to talk about the role in the beginning, they kind of offered me an opportunity to sit down, listen, learn more about the role, and also kind of let my nerves sort of settle in before I actually began talking. This is not the only time this has happened. I've actually had multiple interviewers who have done this, and every time they did that, I actually felt more prepared to talk about myself and answer the questions that were coming up. But even with interviewers taking a bit more time in the beginning to talk about the roles and all their expectations and everything like that, there's one more thing in particular that really helps with the rest of the interview. Now, I remember I had a pretty surprising experience when I went into one of my interviews some time back. I remember I was going in expecting to be, a pretty traditional type of interview with the interviewer be, all dressed up and have like the virtual background and Zoom with the branding and all that. What I got instead was actually 2 interviewers who showed up in just normal everyday clothes and gaming headsets. And then when it came to the about me question, after they got done talking about themselves and the company and the role and all that, they then took the time to talk about just things like their favorite TV shows, their hobbies, what they did in their free time. And honestly, what that did for me was it made me feel a lot more comfortable in the interview. It all goes back to that human connection thing that I talked about earlier. You want to feel like that you're connecting with real people and that you're just having a conversation, because that's really what helps both sides be a lot more comfortable during the interview. You get to really hear more about themselves themselves and what makes them special. And that in turn kind of helps you feel more comfortable about doing the exact same thing. Because then you start to think of it less of an interview and more of like that conversation thing. You're just kind of talking about yourself and your experiences, and not just,
here are my soft skills, here are my technical skills.
it's about, hey, here's some of the things that I've done, here's how I interact with people, and here's just kind of what I do in general and how I am as a person. And then they can kind of take from that and see, okay, this is probably how they're going to do on the job. Because they're getting to hear more about both sides and how they are as actual people. You start to get more insight into actual personalities and how they actually interact with people on a daily basis. Because a lot of that transfers over to your work life. And as a person who's been interviewed many times, I really tend to appreciate that, because it kind of helps everyone feel a little bit more understood as actual people. Really getting to know people on a deeper level through those human connections and just feeling like a conversation, making everything feel just very down to earth. To me, that's what really makes the whole experience just feel a lot less stressful, and in turn helps me put on a much better self during the interview. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to do so, and I'll see you all next time. Adios.